Yeah, so we're excited. This is Steve. I have Tate here, and we're joined by Sean of Glom out of New York City. By definition, I have to read it off. I don't like to go into band name meanings, I guess you should say, but I
Yeah,
have
yeah,
to
yeah.
I have to ask you this because Glom means stealing or latching onto. Recently, have you taken anything without permission? Maybe our hearts with your music, but outside of that,
Hmm.
anything else?
No, I actually try to not do that. But at the same time, sometimes things. I'll give you a little quick anecdote, real quick. I have not done that in recent years, FYI. But what I find kind of funny is that there was this story, and I just remember this right now. So a little off the cuff, when the first, I think this was the second or third Glom show ever. Right. We played a show at a venue that doesn't exist anymore. It was like a DIY venue in Brooklyn. And the drummer at the time was in like the gear section of like, he was like looking at like, there was like all the where they keep the microphones and stuff. And there was a crash cymbal, and it was like the same crash cymbal as what he had in high school that he cracked. And he was like talking to the venue people. He was like, whose crash is this? Because they didn't have drums there or anything. Like it
Right.
was like he was like, whose crash is this? And they're like, oh, I don't know. And then like eventually like five or six people later down the chain, like someone was like, I don't know whose that is, right? And he took it, and we've called it the curse crash, like in like those early years. And then the thing is like things weren't going well with that. And he doesn't play in the band anymore, and I don't think that the crash is around and things are going good. So I think it really was cursed.
Did that factor into your decision? Were you like, oh man, he kind of put some bad voodoo on our band?
No, no, no. It was an old friend.
Yeah.
It was just one of those things that was like sometimes there's situations where they're like when you play all these venues, like especially now, like touring and stuff, like people like leave stuff, and like the venues, like I would actually it would be really good if that left,
Yeah.
like. But I don't know. I personally have not done anything like that in a long time. I know besides stealing riffs, I steal riffs from people all the time, according to people on the internet. So yeah,
Yeah, I believe in karma first off, so I guess that's kind of what we're talking about. By
for
the way,
sure.
have you ever left something behind and you get in the van and you're like miles away and you're like, "Oh shoot, like I got to turn around for that."
Knock on wood, this that hasn't happened in probably 15 years. But when
Okay.
I was a kid, and like, because I started playing shows when I was, I think, like 12 or 11. It was like right when I started playing guitar, I started playing shows with like some friends, and we play like hardcore and metal shows and stuff like that. I used to forget my bass a lot, and like I would just like we would like show up to the venue, and I just wouldn't have like it wouldn't be there. And I was like, huh, wonder where it is. And then like the drummer's dad, like at the time would be like, all right, I'll drive you back to like the house. We'll see if it's there. And it was just always like right on like the couch every time. And that happened like three or four times when I was like between the ages of 12 and 15. So I
Yeah,
haven't done it in a long time, but I will say, oh, actually one time I left my bass at a festival that was like 4 hours away. But
oh
luckily,
geez.
like someone that we knew was still there, and so he picked it up. But I did used to forget it a lot, but my equipment. But now, not so much.
I never thought of that side, like forgetting your instrument or
Yeah,
something behind. But I always hear about like the vans being robbed and stuff like that,
yeah,
but never really thought about like just leaving it behind. But you did mention people say you steal riffs, so
yeah.
I did notice like riffs pop up a lot, like, whether it's like your stories, your comments, and I did see you called someone out the other day, I think. But are you starting to identify? Are you starting to identify as the man who writes riffs? I feel like I said, riffs just pop up behind your name so much.
It's funny because also no one's ever really asked me that before, so that's a good question. I will say that I've always been drawn to riffs. Like when I first started playing guitar, like the reason why I want to start playing guitar, it wasn't to play chords, to be honest. I didn't really like want to play guitar to strum chords. That wasn't what was I was drawn to. I was drawn like I really liked riffs. I was like, what are those called? Like I remember because my dad taught me how to play guitar when I was a little kid, and I was like, what are those? Like, what is that called? Like, it's not a chord. You're not like playing the everything. What is that called? And he was like, oh, it's called either a lick or a riff. And I said, okay. And then I just kind of like always was like noodling that way over just playing like normal. strumming kind of guitar. And so now, like, I feel like the thing that's funny is that since the beginning of Glom, it always kind of has been riff driven. Like, and that wasn't like intentional at the time. And now I kind of feel like I'm just leaning into it more because I like them. Like, like I don't really
Yeah.
I don't like when guitar, like the thing that's funny about guitar music is despite the fact that Glom is a guitar band, I don't like really like guitar music, like I think that like the thing that is I'm always drawn to is when like the guitar player in a band is doing something interesting and like or like playing like like one of my favorite riff makers I guess is John Frusciante, Chili Peppers. So it's like with him, it's like yeah, you say what you want about the Chili Peppers, they're a goofy. There's some goofiness there, but the way that he writes riffs is has always been like extremely inspirational to me since I was a child. And now I just want to write riffs like him. And I don't know if it translates. I don't know if like it sounds like that, but that's what it sounds like to me. So I don't know. I don't
That-
know.
That's great to hear because I feel like whenever people talk about the Chili Peppers, they talk about Flea and the bass playing in the band.
Right.
But to hear like to get so big, everybody has to be so talented in the band.
Right.
When you hear riffs, like what is the first few songs that come to mind for you? It doesn't not necessarily yours, just like in general.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like when like the one of the first like not to just keep harping on Chili Peppers, the first riff that like really spoke to me, like well, one of the riffs, not the riff, was Californication.
Okay.
Like I'm still like I still think that is potentially the greatest riff of all time. And like I didn't mean to neglect Flea in this situation, but like a lot of Flea's playing, the way that he plays, not when he's slapping, like not I don't like I'm not like a real slap guy, but like when he's playing like kind of more melodically, like it leans into a pot like a thing that's really cool. And like so Californication is really like cool to me because it kind of has the pin back thing. Like I don't know if you're familiar with their vibe, but like the pin back thing, like being like those kind of like I don't know, like to me, like the thing that's funny about it is that like the glass riff that I wrote, people like say that I stole it from King Cruel, but in my mind, it sounds like I stole it from Californication. Like that's what I was like kind of trying to go for with like the way that riff goes. But I don't know if anyone hears that again.
No,
Another
no.
one that I always think about. Oh, sorry to cut you off. What were you saying?
Well, I was gonna say that happens so much. I remember reading like Nirvana books, and they would always say Kurt Cobain stole riffs from like,
Yeah, yeah,
but it's called influence for a reason. I think
right.
you're inspired by the music, so it's gonna have close resemblance to what you're listening to.
Definitely. I feel like there's like, another riff that really speaks to me is there's a Beatles song called What You're Doing that is like a, album song. It's not even like a big hit of theirs or anything. And it has like a 12-string guitar. And like I had read somewhere before, because when I was in high school and still now, like I was obsessed with the Smiths. And because of the fact that like those guitar parts they're so like complicated, but like, like there's like a thing, like I don't like really love complicated music, but there's something about like the way that the Smiths and like Johnny Marr would write a guitar riff that was very complicated, but it sounds easy. And so that's why like it's interesting to me. Like, because as a kid, you always have like, especially as a guitar player, like being a teenager, like I had a real like metal phase and like technical phase where I was like really impressed by stuff like that. And yes, it is very impressive, but I think there's something about like the emotion that can get extracted from like something that like the Smiths do or something that like Chili Peppers do or Sonic Youth or anything like that. Like there's like something else that is achieved by what they're able to write versus just shredding. And that's what I try to do. I don't know. I don't know how else to really put it, but it's just like there's something there's like a mystery element that happens with all those people that I've stated where it's like it's such it pulls something out of you, in a way that is very aspirational to me.
By turning into like someone who's constantly probably writing riffs, I guess. Is that what you notice first in a song? Is I guess the instrumentals before like the vocals and lyrics and everything?
Like I think that like weirdly enough, like despite the fact that I'm like Glom is very riff driven, there's a funny thing about some of my favorite songs, like recent songs, don't have riffs, and like and the strength is in the melody, right? And like vocally, or just the main idea. So like, really, like I really like Aphex Twin. Obviously, there's no vocals in Aphex Twin, and so like you have to find the hook in something else. And I think that that's very interesting to me. But like I feel like when I'm like listening to music, the thing that jumps out, if there's no riff, granted, because also like realistically speaking, I think that most riffs are kind of bad. And I feel that way about myself as well. Like I'm not just saying, like I think that like there's a lot of music that's come out in the last 20 years where it's like some of them, like some of the riffs don't have, they're like slightly too simple and like too like, I don't know. I don't want to make music that sounds like a car commercial. Obviously, if someone wants to have a Glom song in a car commercial,
Please do, right?
please send an email. But like, I don't know, there's like a commercial element that happens with a lot of like popular music these days where it's like the riff isn't, it's just like the what it's like if you like googled guitar riff and that's like the first thing that comes up, like, and I don't like want things to sound like that. I want it to be like a little bit more niche.
Would you be okay if your biggest achievement was Glom being sponsored on a car commercial?
Yeah, that'd be cool. Because I think like, I've had this like kind of fantasy where a car company would pay for the tour, because
Okay.
like one of the biggest costs of like touring, especially in 2026, is like car or transportation, right? And so like van rental is a huge bill that comes, and that's part of the cost of doing business, I guess. But like if a car company, like an electric car company, because I know that they're like trying to like make, they're trying to do a lot of things with like vans and stuff like that to make it make sense for this kind of thing. And if a van, like company like Rivian or someone like that was like, here, we'll give you a van and we'll pay for the van. Not even like pay money. I'm just saying like, just give the van. Like that is something that I really would like to try, you know?
Yeah. You're from New York City. I'm from Jersey, so I'm right next door. Tate knows nothing about those $4+ per gallon gas
Uh,
prices out of Minnesota.
Hold on,
yeah.
hold on. Because when I lived in Colorado in peak COVID, I was paying like 5.10 a gallon. All
Well,
right,
also
like
real quick, we were just in Minnesota and the gas was just as expensive. And
yeah,
so,
yeah.
but at the same time, like, yes, of course, like New York and Jersey, East Coast, it's more expensive, because I'm actually from DC originally, but it's always been expensive gas,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
uh, presumably our entire lives. It's been more expensive than
Yeah.
the previous generation. So that's why I think an electric van would be good.
I miss, childhood when like my parents would start complaining about the, I guess, dollar to gallon creeping up
Right.
to close to like $2 or something. Now I look
Yep.
back at that and I'm like, wow, you were really fortunate that most of the time it was just a little over a
Yeah.
dollar. And
Yeah.
now, like, I don't even know if we're going to get below $3 at this point. We'll see. But I guess my thinking is, so it's unpredictable on tour. I guess venues will pay you, but a lot of bands really bank on like the merch sale as well.
Yeah. For
And
sure.
you just don't know who's going to show up, what the crowd's going to look like, if they're going to be willing to spend on merch, like whatever it may be.
Right.
Do you think like when we were going through that moment, because now like, and I hate talking about gas a lot, but now they started to cool off. But do you think some bands were hesitant to hit the road because of that?
It's definitely like the thing that's interesting about it. It's more expensive. Glom started touring, like legitimately touring 3 years ago. It was legitimately, with data and everything, it was cheaper. Like way, but not like, because at the same time, like inflation hasn't like really hit like that hard in the 3 years, like in a noticeable way for this kind of, for what we're specifically talking about. But I will say that the costs have gone up. And so I think that like it is harder to tour now than it ever has been. But another thing that has to do with it is just the fact that, with all that being said, the hardest part about touring at the moment is that venues can't take risks anymore. And so like, the thing that I find really interesting is that, so like, for example, the first Glom headline tour was 2024, May 2024, right? And on that tour, the pre-sale, like realistically speaking, the pre-sales were very low, very low. Like day before some of the shows, it'd be like 1 to 5 tickets sold, right? And that was, granted, that was the first time that we had ever played in like Atlanta or in like wherever, right? And what is interesting now versus back then was that in 2024, the pre-sale numbers didn't scare a venue just have them stop the show. Right. Well, the reality of the situation is that the show has to be stopped if the pre-sale number isn't above a certain threshold. And I'm not like saying that in any sort of way. Like I'm not, that I would obviously understand, as someone who does business, like you can't afford to do it if it doesn't make sense. Right. And I don't think that that was as big of an issue in 2024, 2023, pre-COVID as it is now. Like now it is like you see bands all the time, like bands that do post tours and stuff. They always have to say like, yeah, we have to cancel the show because there weren't enough tickets sold, And that in my experience, that was not as big of a deal back then.
Yeah.
And now it's like, fortunately enough for Glom, it's like that hasn't happened. That didn't happen on our previous tour last month or 2 months ago because we did sell a good amount of pre-sale tickets. But for a lot of bands like if you've never toured before, for example, that's a really hard barrier to cross because like if you've never been to a place before, you have no history in the market, and then you can't play the show, then thus you can't build history in the market. Thus you can't like get an opening slot in a city where like you've never played. And so it's like it's a hard, and also like, if we want to go even deeper with it, like DIY scenes are like not doing so great at the same time because again, it is more expensive. Everything's more expensive now, so I feel like the situation with Glom is that I'm very fortunate to have the situation be where right now it's not really an issue for the band, which is very, very, very lucky.
Yeah.
And I'm aware of that. Yeah.
It's everything. It's the job market too. People are
Mhm.
starting to see cuts, and I'm sure some of these bands are like, we just have to keep it local for now
Yeah.
until we can see like where this music scene is shifting to. But
Right.
and even the economy, where the economy is shifting to. But that makes me think one thing that has been on my mind, and it's something that you kind of started to go into. Like when I look at like bands that are touring, like ones I really love, and like I'm like, if they come to Jersey, I'm there in a heartbeat. But then,
Right.
like, I always notice that they're going to Philly, they're going to New York, and
Right.
I think a lot of bands that already have an established crowd in, like, Asbury Park, New Jersey, like, they
Right.
still come here, so we do see a good amount of bands in Asbury Park, but I'm seeing more
Right.
and more bands are like, "Hey, like, we're just going to Philly, or we're going to New York," because more venue opportunities and also
Right.
probably, more of a crowded city. So, is that like, I don't know if you do the planning for your tours, but is that something you're thinking about? You're like, I wanna stick to big cities because I know, like, I have friends that were, like, in punk bands that were, like,
Right.
pretty known throughout the country, and,
Yeah.
like, several years ago, to your point, they were able to say, "Hey, like, we're gonna go to, like, some random state and just do, like,
Right.
a string of dates in states that we haven't been in, like, years." I don't know if that opportunity is there anymore, like, you really have to be like, "Hey, like, we're gonna stick to the New York Cities, the Bostons,
Right.
I'm sure Minnesota is a great place, right, Tate, to go for music, but,
Right.
like, big cities like that, essentially."
Right. So that is definitely something that like my team thinks about. For sure. Be like, my mentality in, I really want to be playing in places that don't get a lot of bands that come through because there is definitely a philosophy that like that might make the show like better because like there's not a lot of like competition and stuff like that like in per night because like the thing with New York is like yeah there's a band playing every single night in New York City. So like if you're like, for example, when we played the headline show, that was the first Glom show in 2026 in New York. That was last month. There were like 4 other shows in the same like niche that were happening the same night. And so like that's the trade-off. But at the same time, like New York City and Philly and stuff like that, they have more people, more resources. So like venues like need to have another like option because like if they're gonna like if they're gonna make money too, they have to have something going on, you know.
Yeah.
And so I think that realistically, that is definitely something I think about. We've definitely played shows like in 2025 last summer, we did like a run of shows in Florida, for example. right? We played every city in Florida, every major city in Florida. And the thing about Florida that's really interesting is that they don't get a lot of bands. Like, for example, in Orlando, like we played at a venue in Orlando called
Will's Pub?
no, it wasn't Will's Pub. It was they kept telling me about that place. It was called the Bark or something like that.
Not familiar.
Basically, like I knew about this venue because the band Wednesday played there like
Oh,
a year or two before, and the venue's small. Like
okay.
it's a small venue, and like but they have like big bands that play. Like the Lemonheads was playing there like a couple days after we played there, and basically like I was talking to and real just to get real, there was 15 people there, 15 tickets sold, but they didn't pull the show because when I was talking to the venue manager, she was like, bands don't come here. And so like we have to still have like the opportunity, the chance to number one, stay open, one, have music for people that want to go see music, and like everyone that came to that show was like super, super sweet and like just very like appreciative and stuff like that. And like also like the thing that was funny about it is like Glom does have like a good amount of fans in Florida because some of the other shows were very good, but Orlando's like a weird place because it's like it's Disney. It's like it is super Disney, but downtown Orlando is obviously not. So if you've never been there, like it's a very strange like dichotomy. And like realistically speaking, like despite the fact that there was only 15 people there, like I thought it was a great show. It was a lot of fun. Like did very well with merch and like definitely it was definitely worth it to me to play there because like every one of those 15 people was like so stoked, you know. I don't know. I feel like some bands out there would be mad about doing that, but like it's
Yeah.
like I liked it. I liked it. I will say.
I've actually heard that before. I've had Florida bands on here, and they said it's like first off impossible to get traveling bands to come through. I just feel like it's out of the way, kind of. Sorry, Florida, but like
No,
uh,
definitely, definitely. It's hard. It's hard to get
it,
to.
it's a very good music scene. The bands that are still alive there are very committed to what they're doing, and a lot of people like the type of music that you are creating.
Yeah,
The similar sound, but it's not like going to New York and then New Jersey, then Philadelphia. It's like even if you ever went down to Southern Florida, you have to literally turn around to go somewhere else. So
yeah, yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah.
just it's tough to like fit it in during tours,
Yep,
which is really unfortunate because like you said, it is a good crowd. I almost feel bad for like some of the musicians that come from places like that because
for
like
sure.
I
Sure.
feel I feel like you probably been fortunate enough where like you started out in DC and then you made your way to New York City, which just has always had a great music scene. But, I've also had people on this podcast where they talked about growing up in a small town of a few
Yep.
thousand and if you wanted to go play a live show, you had to travel miles on miles, and
Right.
it was just impossible to get I guess, the music out there. I did say for you
Right.
personally, from 2014 to 19, I saw you were kinda couch hopping. You would show up on a Wednesday, leave on a Monday, and then you
Yep.
finally made the commitment to the move to New York City. What was
Yep.
that a music-driven move for yourself?
Yes, partially. Like so, basically, like that. Not to make it mystical or anything. It was just the right thing to do. And like the funny part about it was just that my fiance and I we moved together to New York at the same time. We were in Baltimore, but then we moved up to New York together and to an apartment. And basically we got the spot because a friend of mine like went to go visit the apartment and the guy was down to rent it to us despite the fact that we didn't have jobs, which is very it's rare, but it's also like kind of funny because it is like the story that a lot of people have when they moved to New York for the first time. And we moved there and then 2 weeks later COVID happened. So we were like, oh, was this the right decision? But then it was. So yeah,
That's
things
the
wouldn't have happened if I don't know. This is the thing that's interesting about New York City. I will say, like, and I think this is something that like people who criticize New York like don't quite understand about it is that like if you are like there are the opportunity like obviously it is very expensive to live here. It's very hard to live here in general, but there are opportunities here that do not exist anywhere else. And so I think that's the thing that like some people don't think is worth the cost, like the mental, physical, and financial cost of that. But then the people that do think that the cost is worth it, myself included, they find things that make it work and make it worthwhile.
Yeah. I have so many friends, just because I went to college in North Jersey. So
Hmm.
just by association that they decided I'm going to work in the city because if they
Yep.
stayed in Jersey, it's an easy commute. But a lot of them did eventually move on to New York City. They're living there now. And I got to say, like, even like people who live in New Jersey, if you live outside of New York City, you say, "Oh, I would never live there." I heard it's like gone downhill and stuff like that. But
Right.
if you live in New York City, like those friends that live in New York City, they absolutely love it. Like you could
Right.
never like rip
Right.
them away from New York City. Do you feel like you kind of grown into that attachment as well?
Yeah, but I've definitely like been allured with the city since the first time I ever went here with like by myself was 2009, right? And like that obviously the city was very different. I was like all over. I went all over. Like I went to like Williamsburg, Lower Manhattan, like all these like places that are like bigger names now. Like Williamsburg was literally like all warehouses up until like maybe 5 years ago. I don't know. Now it's like a mall, but like back then it was like very hip, I guess. And I think the thing that's interesting about it is that even from back then, I was like, this is like the place that I think is very special. I didn't know if I wanted to live there, but I was like, there's something about this place that is very mystical, I guess. There is like a magical, ineffable quality that exists here. And I will say, like, with that point, on this last tour, like we did like think I could be incorrect about this number, but I'm fairly positive we drove through and or stayed in 37 states. And look, I've seen a lot. I've seen a lot of things. New York is the best city, like in the entire world. Like, there's a reason why people like come here from all over the world all the time, year round, to either visit or like move here. So like that's what I gotta say. And I'm not. Hey, at the same time though, I like Minnesota. I like St. Paul. We played in Minneapolis twice, and I love it there.
Don't give him
Beautiful.
credit. Don't give him credit.
It's beautiful.
Don't
I've
even
never
there.
been, Steven. You can't
I
talk.
haven't.
I've been to New York City.
I will say though, I also, growing up in DC, DC is very similar to Jersey, so it's like there's something there too. I will say, I think, but at the same time, like when you meet like people like from other parts of the country, like specifically like people from the Pacific Northwest or California, like other coasts, the other coast, they don't understand how close the East Coast is like to each other, and I think that that's really an interesting geographical and like mental thing because like when you like for example there are so many people in New York City that I've met in the fashion world or in music that are also from DC, right? So like hundreds of them, right? And I think the thing that's really interesting is that if you tell that to a person from California, for example, they're like, that doesn't make any sense to me because also like when you think about California, it's like SF to LA is 6 hours without
Yeah.
traffic. So like they don't understand that it's like, oh wait, like DC with traffic to New York obviously is like 6 hours, but if there's no traffic, it's 3 hours, So there's a proximity thing that happens on the East Coast with all the East Coast cities that is it just makes it make more sense to like be on the East Coast in general, in my opinion, there's a lot of things you can do.
It's true. You can drive through Jersey probably in 2 hours, so you can get from state to state pretty quick, and I think I can get up to, like, Boston in, like, 4 to 5 hours, which is crazy
For
to say
sure.
because you talk about
For sure.
California where it takes 6 hours to get to another city, but yeah, just thinking of that, I have to ask this, I don't know if you're a sports fan, but you were in the city maybe you weren't actually, I think you might have
I
been on
wasn't.
tour
I wasn't in
for
the city when they won.
for the Knicks. Are you just by association, are you a Knicks fan at all?
Like to be perfectly blunt, like I'm not really a basketball fan in general
Okay.
because like growing up, I mean, like I don't know what it was. I think like when I was a kid, I was really into baseball. And so like, and my dad's a huge Yankees fan because he was a kid in the 60s. So it's like, yeah, of course he's going to like the Yankees. Those are the best baseball team of all time, the
Yeah.
most expensive baseball team of all time, you know? And so like we never watched basketball when I was a little kid. And so I feel like basketball, I mean, I played basketball. I feel like when you're an East Coast kid, like
Oh
you
yeah,
play rec basketball,
definitely.
you know? But like when I was a kid, like I was more so a Wizards fan because I was really into them when Jordan was on the Wizards. Like the comeback, you know?
Those were still some sad years, though.
Yeah.
Definitely. But it was like at the same time, like I just thought it was so funny that like Michael Jordan like played on the Wizards for some reason, you know, and he lived like where I went to high school, like close to where I went to high school.
Oh,
So
that's
like
cool.
people would, like see him like around, you know, and I was like,
Yeah,
oh, this Michael Jordan's the greatest, you know. But with that said, like the Knicks, like every year when the Knicks, like you know, the past 3 years when they were in the
yeah,
playoffs, like it was. It's definitely like a very big thing because like, you know, a lot of friends of mine that are from here are huge Knicks fans and stuff like that. So you're like, I'm following it from their perspective and like
yeah,
they're super excited and so when the win happened, you know, we obviously we followed the playoffs and the finals. We were in Austin when this happened, and we were watching the last 8 minutes at an outdoor bar in Austin. And then when they won, we got a little excited and we realized where we were because like everyone is a Spurs fan there
yeah.
because you know, like San Antonio is very close to Austin.
And New York fans
And
were getting beat up
for
after
sure,
they won.
for sure. So we got out of there.
Yeah,
We got out of there real quick.
I
I
just
wa-
want to cut it quick. Like last year, I think it was, I told Steven my favorite player of all time was Carl Anthony Towns, and he called me an idiot, and he just brought a championship to
yeah.
your team.
Well,
So,
Jalen Brunson brought a championship to the
yeah,
team.
Carl Anthony Towns was underrated that whole
Yeah, yeah.
series.
His passing
Yeah.
ability actually. But I do want to say the T Wolves know nothing about this Knicks winning. Just throwing it out there. That so much so that they had to go after Lonzo Ball, which was an
Right.
interesting trade. But
LaMelo.
Lamelo,
Even better, huh?
yeah.
Even better. All right. I have, for my first thing, I'm so glad you said John Frusciante is one of your favorite guitarists ever. I think I've said on this podcast before, he's one of mine too.
Yeah.
Super bluesy, love it.
Yeah.
But the first question I wanted to ask is, with Glom, you have like this kind of like collision between like hazy production and atmosphere, and then
Yeah.
like instant grabbing melodies or hooks. Like the first song I think of when I think of Glom is "I Wanted the Real Thing," like that. Do
Okay.
do 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 do. When you write, are you starting with like the atmosphere, or are you starting with like that melody? Are you building off of a hook? Or are you building off of
No,
like
no,
the idea of
yeah.
it?
Great question. The atmosphere comes last. Like to be frank, basically like it's usually the riff. It's like the riff is the first thing, and then like if I like the development of it enough, then I'll record it myself on my computer, and then I'll take it to the producer, and then he will make like we'll like figure out the atmospheric element after.
Okay.
But it's like it has to be like to me like if something's good enough, it has to be like good enough without any of that production stuff. Sorry, hold on, I'll say it again. It has to be good enough without production. It
Okay.
has to be like just like if I can play it on an acoustic guitar with nothing going on, then that's a good enough song for me. And so that's why it's like I don't know. It is like kind of nice that you like the atmosphere because people say that they like that element of the band, you know. But to me, it's like the thing that needs to be the most important is like the hook of it. Yeah, I don't know if that makes sense, but
Yeah. So you're building off of like the hook and the melody. Everything else comes after.
yeah,
You got to make sure that
yeah,
part's
yeah, yeah.
solid to lock in. Okay.
Yes.
And then previously, you've talked a lot about music scenes between like the New York City music scene or the Dodge 112 music scene. Um, what do you think people misunderstand when they romanticize like a DIY era after it's over?
I think people when they're we like I think the thing that's jumping out to me right now that I feel like I need to note is just that at the time of those shows when they were all happening, they seemed very dangerous. Like they were always in places that should not have had shows. They were always in places that were like too filled. Like it just seemed unsafe, you know? And I think that that's something that no one talks about in the DIY scene. Whereas, like, some of these shows were really gnarly. Like, we played a show in an Alston, like, house in Boston, like where Berkeley is. This was like 3 or 4 years ago. And the staircase was probably, it could have collapsed. Like, just like being like realistic here. Like, like nowadays, like I'm thinking about like liability and stuff like that, and like you have to like a lot of time, like when you play a festival, for example, you have to like have an insurance policy, like you have to pay for one. So it's like I'm thinking in that world where I'm like, this is not safe. Like that speaker could have like fallen on someone. Like people could get electrocuted. And like yeah, I've definitely played shows where it's like the power is not good, and you do get shocked, and so like it could be worse. And so I think that's something about the DIY scene. Like, while there's a lot of like really good things that come out of it, like it's like a miracle that some of those shows like nothing happens.
Oh yeah. It's like everyone's first introduction to like a basement show is getting shocked by an SM58 for the first time. Like
Exactly. I'm afraid of getting shocked now. I used to not be, but now I'm like terrified of it.
Yeah. That kind of makes me think of a response you gave in a previous interview about your first ever show. It
Huh.
was a 2018 New Hampshire fashion show, and
Yep.
you said it went well, other than the people who were running it said you were too loud. Um,
Yeah.
I feel like you're kind of like Dinosaur Jr. Like you need to be loud on the stage. Like that's a Glom show right
Yeah.
there. Is that the only time that someone's ever complained about you being too loud?
It's funny that you say that because, yeah, that's the only time that any like nowadays people are like when we play shows and stuff, like people are like, you could have been louder, you know? And like I was like, I thought that was plenty loud. But there's people have their own tastes, I guess, and like, a lot of bands do play very loud, and I think that uh my note from that last tour was that I think that we should be louder on stage. Like, obviously not, you can't control drums, but I'm saying
Yeah.
like I'll turn up now a little bit. But that was the only time. That was literally the only time, and it was funny that that was the first show. That was the first complaint. It was like at like I don't know. It was a beautiful New Hampshire estate kind of thing, and like the owners were like, "That was way too loud, like way too." And also, like they kicked everyone out. It was a whole thing. Like,
Oh,
but
jeez.
it's fine now. Nothing happened, but
Yeah.
obviously it's been almost 10 years. Like, it's it's fine. But that's a funny pull. I completely forget about that show. Like all this time, like there was only four Glom songs, so like the rest of the set we played like covers. You
What
know,
covers?
we played "Reeling in the Years" by Steely Dan. Um, we played "Dancing in the Dark" by Bruce Springsteen.
Wow.
Oh, we played "Dreams" by Fleetwood Mac. I
Okay.
love. I mean, all these songs are the songs that I love. Oh, we played. This is a kind of a weird pull. We played "Wah Wah" by George Harrison. No, no, sorry, not "Wah Wah." It was the one that's it's called "What Is Life" by George Harrison. That's what we played. And
Can we
that's
pull
the
these
song that's in.
anywhere?
No, there's no footage. There was no footage of that show.
Oh
Like,
man.
there might have been like a little bit of footage like
Yeah.
from 10 years ago, I guess, but like it was uh no one was filmed. It was very strange, actually. It was a very strange, like, I'm very appreciative to do it. And I'm like obviously like the designer, still friends to this day, but it was just like such a funny first show to play.
If you come to Jersey soon, you will steal or you will become a fan favorite if you play Bruce Springsteen, by the
Yeah, we
way.
were playing we were playing Jersey, we're playing Jersey in August
What venue are you at?
at
I didn't even look.
Crosswoods,
Oh,
Crosswinds.
are you playing up in North Jersey?
No,
Yeah,
it's in
Crossroads.
Crossroads. It's
Garwood.
in
Yeah.
Garwood. Yeah. So near
Yes.
Asbury, right?
Oh, I've been to Crossroads a bunch. It's like an hour from Asbury, I would say. It's more
Okay.
North
It's like
Jersey.
it's closer to Brooklyn, right?
It would, yeah, I would say so.
Okay.
That's a good venue though.
Nice.
You'll get a good crowd. Who you playing with there?
We're opening for the band that we're on tour with. The headliner's called Slow Joy.
Okay,
Yeah.
sick, sick. I might
It'll
have
be
to take the
fun.
trip. Yeah,
You got to roll on out. I love Jersey.
yeah, I'm gonna come through for that. That's cool. I'll get my buddy Mike to come through. He's up in North Jersey.
Nice.
That makes me think though. Talking about like that first show to what you guys are now. And I remember prepping for this interview. I looked at some interviews from 2020, and it was like a big deal that you were getting 5,000 listens, which, for some bands, that's a huge accomplishment. But at this
Yeah,
point,
yeah,
like,
yeah.
your peak has been hundreds of thousands of listens. So like you're definitely crushing that at this point. But I did also see in an interview, I was curious about this because when you worked at, I believe it was a clothing store, right?
Yep. Yep.
When you first moved to New York City, Self Edge. I was looking for the
Yep.
name. You said you met your lawyer, your entertainment lawyer, through there.
Yep.
And I think you said something about like the lawyer was almost like, if you want to take this seriously, like you need something like this, representation like this. How long were you thinking about like I want to take music seriously? Not that you weren't taking it seriously,
Right,
but like
right.
I want to take it to the next step. And what was that conversation like with this entertainment lawyer? And has it made a big difference for you?
Oh, absolutely. I think the thing that's funny about it is that what exactly happened is that he was a customer at the store for a couple of years, and I met him that way, and we became friends from that. And then like the first like viral Glom video happened. This was like 2 years after meeting him. And from that I got like approached by an agency, like the agent that I'm still with right now, and they're called WME. And basically, like, I texted him and I was like, "Hey, do you know this guy?" And I told him the agent's name, and he was like, his like direct quote in the text was like, "Yes, you need to come into the office like this week," you know. And then we talked for a while, and he was like, "Things are going to get really complicated for you." And I was like, I don't know what you mean by that." But then he was right, because it did become very complicated for like 2 years, like 2 years straight. It became very complicated. So because like right after that, then like all the labels started coming forward, and like those label negotiations take a long time, and they're very complicated. Even at like the scale that Glom is at, like it still takes like 6 months at least to negotiate anything, you know? I think the thing that, like, to answer your question about like how long I wanted to take it seriously, it's like I've been wanting to take it seriously the entire time since I was like 12 years old. But there's no like rules, and there's no like rule book or handbook about how to do it. And so I just didn't know what to do, you know? And I still don't. But
Yeah.
at the same time, like I know a little bit better now, but it's, like, realistically it's still like unclear like what the next step should be. And like, but because there's no right answer, you know?
Yeah. Uh, I did see, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but looking at your Spotify page, it says
Mhm.
there was music in 2022, and then there wasn't music until 2025 again, at least on there, released
Oh,
wise.
well, basically,
Uh,
like that's like that was a little like how the sausage is made. They just like basically, once I signed with the label, they like pulled. So basically, like they just like took the songs. So I released Glass, 3 songs in 2023 by myself, like just literally like uploaded them myself, and one of them being Glass. And then when they re-uploaded the song through their distributor, they made it set to only be in 2025.
mm-hmm.
It doesn't, it's not, it's like just literally like, that's just a little like thing to, it was just a re-release. So that's like what
Yeah.
happened. So they just like scrubbed the 2023 one. So, cause like we removed it from the the thing that I was using, which was actually kind of funny because the thing that I was using ended up like all of that's like AI feeding. There's a whole other conversation, but that's honestly, it's for the best that it's that initial release was lumped into a new thing, you know?
Yeah, this might be an overplayed question. Sorry if you've answered this a bunch of times, but hopefully I can add like a different twist to this. But
Mhm.
it sounds like for Glass, you really leaned into social media, so TikTok videos and Instagram
Right.
Reels, and uh, even today, like you're pretty active on social media. You'll post videos just to like stay current with the your audience and everything. But I guess my question is just because like so many bands, that's their story. I just interviewed a band last week,
Mhm.
and they same thing. TikTok helped them get views, and then next thing you know, they're getting close to 1 million listens a month. You know, so it definitely helps, and it seems like it could be the leading contributor to people finding an
Right.
audience. Um,
Right.
it's not like the 90s early 2000s where like a lot of these bands, because contrary to people's belief, there still are a lot of bands out there, but just
Right.
not a lot of bands being found, I guess. I guess like bands would be played on radio stations, and
Right.
uh, there was always the live music side of things just being found that way. But do you feel like I guess is social media the way to go now? Like, do bands
That's
almost
a,
have to do it to be found?
you know, it's funny. Okay. If you had asked me that question a year ago, I would have 100% said yes. Now, I don't know. But that's just because like I think that right now there is like a huge amount of oversaturation going on the platforms. Like for example, like
Yeah,
okay, like if we're talking just purely Spotify, there's 100,000 songs uploaded to Spotify every day, right? And then you got to think about that. Of those people, how many of them have figured out how to use Instagram or like figured out how to use like TikTok to like promote? And so that dilutes every other thing that is even like established. I'm not even really talking about myself. I'm just talking about like pages that have been doing that sort of marketing that will make that reach smaller, if that makes sense. So nowadays, I
yeah,
feel like it is like way harder to use it as a tool because of those factors. Like there's way more people posting guitar videos now. There's way more people posting anything on like on social media. And so it like, but at the same time, like I don't think that it is the way. It is obviously a way. I think that the more important thing is cultivating a small but dedicated audience. And so I think that like my mentality is to like keep posting it because there is that small like audience that still interacts every day, you know, and they still like DM every day and stuff like that. And it's like that is, I think that's the way to go. But at the same time, I don't know. Obviously, other bands have different stories about that same exact phenomenon. So, like, I have a friend who had a viral song, and they were like, uh, "It's not the best thing to do to try to get a viral song because
right.
if you get a viral song, then you have to make another viral song." And it's not even a guarantee that those people that like use the song on TikTok or whatever will like come to a show or will buy a vinyl or whatever, you know? And so it's kind of a curse. And so that shifted my mentality where it's like, okay, that's not really what I'm trying to do anymore. I'm just trying to like nurture the people that are actually down. And obviously that
Yeah.
in turn finds new people every day as well. But that the goal is to not really go viral anymore, you know?
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting hearing that because I've always thought human appeal is the number one thing in the world. Anything you
Right.
do, even like when I look at this podcast, it's like I hope I make a human connection before I, worry about like what type of numbers this podcast gets or like
Right.
who's listening. At the end of the day, like you want listeners because it certainly helps, but
Right.
having that connection, and I think that was the biggest part about like the music community. Uh, years ago when I got like started going to shows. I never played in a band, but
Right.
um, what sucked me in was the human connection that every show brought. Um,
Right.
and like I don't know if I'm getting older now, but like I feel less and less like I go to a show and I feel like there is that connection for me.
Right.
But like when that show, several times, handful of times a year does happen for me, it is that magical feeling that I felt at a young age in my teenage years, in my early 20s. Um,
Right.
I am curious for you because like you just turned 30, right?
Well, I'm 33 now.
33. Oh
Yeah.
my God, I was looking at an interview from years ago.
Yeah.
So 33, you're in your 30s now. You're close to my age actually.
How old are you?
35. So
Yeah. We're the
so
same. Come on. We remember the same thing.
yeah, I'm
Do
just
you remember
wondering from like a
MySpace?
Yeah.
yeah, I do. Posting a song on MySpace and everything, having a top eight.
For
Um,
sure.
but from like a artist, and I know like the easier response is saying like every show is great. But like from an artist perspective, do you still get like that feeling of like, oh my God, it feels like the first time, or is it like you're searching often for like that magic sometimes?
Well, I'll separate this into two categories. For for me going to shows, I don't really I find it to be very they're always like pretty baseline good, but at the same time now like the problem is that like since, we play shows a lot, I like dissect things in a way that I don't like really want to be dissecting,
Yeah,
where I'm like, oh, well, like that could have been different. That could have been, and so it kind of takes me out of it. If as far as playing shows, to be perfectly honest, even in a deep tour, like, you know, 10 shows into a tour, I still get the same nerves that I would if it was the first time I ever played in public ever, which is like really funny. But again, at the same time, like the thing that causes me like that anxiety and stress is like now I'm like concerned about like the analytics of it, where I'm like, oh, well, like I wonder how many people are actually going to be there, how many, that kind of stuff. The logistics of like the business side of it versus like just like worrying about playing because realistically, like I've been playing guitar for so long that like realistically it's not like that different every day.
yeah. Um, I'm gonna ask two more questions just for the sake of time.
Mhm.
I feel like I could have talked to you for hours.
Oh,
There's
yeah, yeah, yeah,
but maybe there's a part two in the future that we'll have.
for
But
sure.
um, yeah. So again, you've been asked about that couch before, especially in last year's interviews. But I guess I'll ask it from this. Well, two questions with this. The couch that you were sitting on, is that the one that you write a lot of your riffs on? And the second part is being able to write on that couch. Like we talk about like going back to our teenage years, our early 20s when
Right,
like that magic was still there.
right.
Does that kind of bring you back to like childhood where like you were sitting in maybe your room and just writing songs?
Yeah, I the couch that I wrote all that record on, we gave away a year ago.
Oh, damn. You should have
Um,
auctioned it off.
no, it wasn't very comfortable anymore. It lost its cushion, and so the new couch that we have is very comfortable to me. And so the answer is yes. Like I've always like written songs that same exact way. Like ever since I was like first got a guitar, first started playing guitar, like I was sitting in a on a couch or in like a recliner type chair and sitting with bad posture, and that's how I how things come out. And I don't know exactly what it is about that, but there's like a disarming quality that happens being relaxed like that. And that's how every song I've ever written was written.
That's really cool. So my last question. So Below came out what, January, right?
Yep.
Um, and then I'm seeing here, I wanted to ask like what's going on here. So an EP is coming out, right? Downloads.
Yep.
So like what can you say about the EP downloads and like I guess this could be a giant question
Yeah.
because I could talk about Below for hours. Below did very well. Is this kind of you building off the momentum of Below and like how from an artist perspective, what was your thoughts on Below? Was that like a band changing album for you?
Definitely. And so basically, like, I'm trying to like think about this the most succinct way possible because this I could talk about this and this is a whole episode worth. So basically, like prior to the recording of Below, uh, I had a songwriting partner. Well, like he was like the front, he was singing in the band as well, and we would be like we're partners in the band, right? And I was writing the songs regardless, but like he was making decisions with me, etc., like all this kind of stuff. He quit in 2022, and he quit in like March 2022, which was when I started writing the songs that were on Below. And basically, like he quit, and I didn't know what I was like gonna do. I was like, should I keep trying to do this by myself? Like, what? Like, should I do X, Y, Z? Take a break, X, Y, Z. But then, like, as that was happening, got an offer to open for Block Party in DC, and then so that was like the turning point where it was like, okay, this show goes well, we'll see what happens, you know. And the show went really well. Like, I got the guys that were playing, you know, previously to like come back, and then that was when I was like, you know, I think I need to record this set of songs. And we recorded that set of songs in 2023, like started in like March 2023, like a year later, and then finished it by November, right? And then here's what happened. After that, like it started to get a little bit of like momentum with like Glass and all that. And so my friend who's the producer, you know, he he was like, let's just try to like record a live EP of covers for fun, right? Let's just see how it goes. And so we met up. It was me and the live band at the time. And we plugged in, and all those songs were two takes. And so the one that was like all, on the downloads EP, like all those songs that you're hearing or you will hear. Well, there's only three songs. I don't know. I'm talking like there's like, you know, a buffet of songs, but they were all two takes, and that was it. Like it was no click track, no anything, just like playing it. Like young folks, we learned it that day. Like, because I was just jamming on it, and then he was like, "Let's just record this." We were only supposed to record two, and then we were like, "Let's record Young Folks too." So that was
That's sick.
intended to come out before the album, but then all the holdups that happened with like the negotiation of the contracts with the record label and stuff, uh, it's coming out now,
Oh, cool.
and I'm very
Which
excited about it. You know,
I absolutely adore Young Folks. I
yeah.
love that song.
I remember the first day I ever heard that song, and it changed my life because I was like, I've never heard a song that sound like this, and that is the interpretation that we did is a particular way. I think it does sound like Glom, if I wrote the song, which is what I would want it to sound like.
I'm gonna be
And
honest, I didn't know it was a cover.
that's good. That's really good. That's really good. You know, some people said that about the other one too. People said that about don't who's Purdue. I don't want to know if you were lonely, because I thought that was a Green Day song because I heard Green Day play it in like 2003, and guess what? It was a cover too. So
Yeah.
some of the best recordings out there are covers. You know, Twist and
Yeah.
Shout.
Yeah, make it your own and you can make a cover successful. I just think it's so cool that like even when you got like I don't know if corporate's the right word, corporate side of things with music
Right.
in there, like that's when you really started to turn music into your own from top to bottom.
Right.
Is you don't see that often. Usually it's the opposite. Usually it's you know once all these agencies and stuff get involved, like you see bands kind of take a turn, and usually it's for the
Right.
I don't know the worst in some ways, but you on the other hand, it seems like your best is in front of you at the moment. So That's
Well, I
cool.
appreciate it. That's very nice.
Yeah, just keep putting out the hits, and we'll keep listening.
Oh
It's been a
yeah.
good run for you. But like I said, that this honestly could have been a 3 hour interview.
For sure.
In the future we'll have to get a part two.
Yeah, let's do it. I'm down. I'm down.
But that was Sean of Glom. We really appreciate the time. That was a kick-ass interview. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. This is fun.